Hi, it's Liz. Today we're going to be making two sizes of the scrunchies. So this is a typical scrunchie that I use in my hair. It's well loved. But this one is, I would say, the next step up. And this one is very large. So let's get making these. Alright, so this fabric is definitely see-through. It's almost like a fine woven cheesecloth. It could be. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take these selvage ends, and you can either fold them, the selvage ends, together. And we're going to make two different sizes of these extra large scrunchies. So I've got my selvage ends together, and then you're just going to put them together. Then you can decide how tall you want your scrunchie to be. So for this one, this fabric from selvage to selvage end is 55 inches. So I'm going to be doing that. It does move quite a lot, so I really want to make sure my edges are going to be straight and on top of each other. I'm just going to give the edges a little bit of a cleanup because the top piece of that fabric I used for a different project, so it's not quite flush. One, two, three, four, five, six, 7, 8, 9. 9 across all the way. If your fabric is shifting too much, you can just open this up and just do it straight across, so that the edges match. Alright, so I have cut it 9 inches, so that's going to be our very first one. Alright, so for our second scrunchie, we're still going to be keeping it 9 high, so 9 inches high. So this one is 15. It is folded in half, so it'll be 30 inches long. So 9 high and 30 inches long. So you don't have to do this step. I just like to serge the edges. It just feels a little bit sturdier. It cleans up the edges, and especially something that frays quite a bit, I just want to make sure it has a little bit of stability. But you definitely don't have to do this step. It's just something that is my preferred method. So just to chat a bit more about the fabric, you do want something lightweight for this. You want it something like satin or silk or something that has drape and movement, just because we're making it an extra large scrunchie. If you use something like this, is more upholstery, but it's definitely thicker, more dense. And so if I do 9 inches of something like this, it's definitely going to provide extra weight, especially if it's 55 inches long and 9 inches high. That's going to be really heavy on top of our heads. So we want to make sure we're choosing material that is going to be able to wear for a long time. So I'm just going to show you on this piece of fabric that has a right side and a wrong side. The blue side is what I want on the outside. So I'm just going to put them together, and I'm going to sew my ends together. And if you've serged, you can just serge it beyond that stitch. If you didn't do any serging, you can just do 1/2 inch or preferred method that you choose. You can see this one's already fraying. So if you feel like there's quite a bit of fraying going on with your fabric, you can do a bit more down there, maybe even do a zigzag stitch and then just cut off the excess. But it's really up to you. So I'm going to be putting my ends of the fabrics together. I'll clip my edges too for my serging. And just make sure that there's no twists in my fabric, because now it is a very long piece of fabric. So I just want to make sure that both ends match but also are straight. And I'm just probably going to be serging just after the serger line. You can also give this a press if your fabric is wrinkling up quite a bit, and it just helps set the stitches into the fabric too. So you can see for this one that doesn't have any serged edges, it's fraying quite a bit, so I can do a zigzag on this side, not on this side of the fabric, not toward the rest of your fabric, but you want to do it on the edges, and just to clean it up. If you notice that your fabric has shifted at the bottom as well and you haven't serged it, you can definitely do some trimming so that it will all line up and it might look a little bit nicer, but it's your first one too, and it's just a practice, so we're still all learning. So if I wanted to do a zigzag stitch, I can go up to my machine, I can go on to figure out which one I want to do, maybe just a basic one like a B or an A, and then change that setting. So for this one, I'm just going to take my scissors, give that edge a bit of a trim, give that top part a little bit of a trim. I can also do this with my rotary cutter and make sure that I'm doing some proper measurements, but just not cutting my stitches is the most important part. So now we are going to open this up, and you want to find the middle point of your fabric, and you're going to just press this open. If it's not opening or laying flat for you, you can give it a little press. Be also careful when you are ironing your fabric that you're not crushing it. Just look at what you are using and then do some searches for what you should be doing for ironing. Should the iron go directly on your fabric? Should you have another cloth on top of your fabric so that the iron isn't directly laying on your fabric? So if you're saying something using like velvet, it might crush the fibers if you were using the iron right onto the fabric, but it just really depends. So I'm going to open up my fabric. You can also, if you want to be really precise, you have your fabric with the ends together, and then you go all the way to the other side and you can make a little mark at both ends, and that's going to be the edge that you're going to be lining this one up with, your edge one. So I want to lay it flat, open it up, and give that a little press, or you can do a pin. So we have our material, our middle edges here. We're going to start from the top, go 3/4 down. All right, we're going to create a tube. Take your bottom, meet that top edge of your tube, and do that all the way through down your fabric. All right, so it's created a separate tube. So you're going to take your top piece, meet it to the top of the bottom. So it creates a tube in here. I'm going to show you again. We have our selvage edges out like this. I'm going to start with the top, meet it, bring it down 3/4 of the way. Take your bottom, just the first top layer, take the bottom, meet it at the top so it creates a tube. You're going to take the bottom and you're going to meet that up at the top. And what we're going to do is sew just beyond the serger, and we're going to move the tube along. We don't want to sew in the tube because then we won't be able to get it out. So you're going to come all the way around sewing, and then I'll leave an inch and a half opening so that we can turn the tube inside out. All right, I'll show you on this piece of fabric. So we have our seams together edge. I'm going to start at the top. We're going to come 3/4 down. The bottom is going to meet the very top there. Now we've got this little tube, this top, then we're going to take the bottom here, meet it up at the very top, and then we're going to sew this together. So we're going to move the tube along in the middle, and we're going to make sure we don't sew in the tube. I'm going to do this one again for you, and then we will sew. So I take the top part, 3/4 down, do that all the way along, take the bottom, meet it. Now I've created that tube. And we're going to take the bottom piece, meet it with the very top piece. I'm going to put this in my sewing machine. like so. So I have my two pieces. I'm going to put those together and make sure they stay together when I sew. Then you're just gonna pull the fabric in the tube along and make sure that it's staying away from the edges you're sewing. So we want to make sure that we're leaving that inch and a half opening, and we just back stitch it so we're able to turn it inside out. So now you sewed your tube, you're just gonna put your finger in and pull it out. So now we've created the tube, I'm gonna do a elastic. All right, so I use this elastic, it's by Dritz. It's a 1/4 inch cotton swimmer elastic. I use this one for just regular size and mini scrunchies as well, so it's versatile. You can definitely get different sizes for sure, so that's the size of it. And it's just going to give you different looks. I use a cotton swimmer's wear elastic because I do use my scrunchies to put my hair up when I go to bed, and sometimes it might be a little bit damp, but also it just like, you don't know what you're going to be doing, and so I just rather, if I'm putting all the time and effort to make my own scrunchies, that it's going to last for a long time. And I'm just going to use an 8.5 inch elastic and a safety pin to put it into the tube. So I have my 8.5 inch elastic. So I'm just going to use a safety pin for one end. There are other tools you can use, but this is the most simplest one. If I was doing this maybe on a mass production, then I can look into some other tools that you use to put elastics in. And you're just going to find your opening, and you really want to make sure you hold the one side of the elastic and you do not lose it, because this is quite a lengthy tube. And you're just going to go around and feel it. The beauty about making your own scrunchies is you can really choose your own material, your color, and also the size of the elastic. So if you have really thick, dense hair, you can maybe make it longer or shorter in the fabric. So you can make the fabric longer and maybe the elastic a bit longer, just so that it provides the same amount of scrunch that you're looking for, but then also it's able to hold all your hair up. But if you have really thin hair, you can also make it smaller fabric with smaller elastic. You could do a 6-inch elastic, and that's going to make it really, really full and tight. So it just really depends on your hair length, how much you're going to put up, and then also the characteristics of your hair. And then also the colors, which is really great. I think the color and material of choosing your own fabric is really nice. So if you are having problems holding on to this edge of the elastic, you can also pin it to your fabric on the inside so that you don't lose it. The only thing is, if you're using a thin material, you just don't want it to rip as it's pulling and tugging across. All right, so it has come through now. And now you can really see how full your scrunchie is. If you have really a lot of hair, what you could do is cut it like at 10 or 12 inches, and then this would be the time to be like, oh, I like it this size, or like maybe you want to do a couple more inches and you like it smaller. Just feeling that tension. You can also knot it before you sew it, your ends together, just to play with it before you make any final commitments. But this is the stage where you would be doing it, because our next steps are going to be sewing the elastics together and then also the closing up the hole. So you do have an option. You can sew your elastics up together, or you could just leave it as a knot. What I like to do is I first take out the safety pin. And then I put mine overlapping each other. So I overlap them and I do a crisscross. So I start at one end, I come down another, like back stitching at both ends. And if you feel like it, you can also put a stitch across and a stitch across there. I use a straight stitch when I do this process, but really it depends up to you. Doesn't have to look pretty either, so just make sure that it's durable. So my first stitch, I just did it together, just back and forth, nothing very fancy. I'm gonna do another stitch front and back. So really giving it a stretch test, because you know, that's what happens with a scrunchie. So if you feel that it's secure enough and you're feeling confident that it's overlapping and it's not going to come apart, because we've done multiple different sewing at different stress points, then we can put the elastic inside. Now we still have the hole to sew up. It's up to you. If you want to hand stitch it, you can hand stitch it closed. You can line it up and just give it a nice top stitch with your machine. So if you're wanting to do a top stitch, you could change your settings for the length of your stitch so that it's really tiny, and so it's not going to be as visible as something that is bigger. And if your fabrics don't align up, you can play with your fabric. It also really helps if you hand stitch it closed if some of your fabrics align up, but you can also just do a top stitch. So this is a very large, very exaggerated scrunchie. This one is the 55-inch length one. So now we're going to do the one that was 30 inches long and complete the same process. So I'm going to put my ends together and sew just beyond the serge line. All right, so we have sewn the edges together. So if you're having problems matching up the edges at the end, what you can do is, instead of putting this in the tube first, you could match up your edges to sew them. So what you could do is you lay it out flat again, and then you're going to flip it. So the edges are on that side, your seam is on that side. And then what you're going to do is the exact same thing. The top piece is going to come down 3/4 of the way. The bottom piece is going to come up to meet that tube. And then you're going to be doing your edges first. You're going to match up your edges. You can see some of my fabric shifted and mine on my edges do not match. So that's why I'm going to be doing it this way first. I'm going to match up my edges. And then I'm going to sew my edges first and continue along the tube. All right, so I'm at the end. I create a little hole. I'm just going to take my finger, pull out the tube. All right, this one's definitely smaller than the other one, so this is the 30-inch one. So for this one, I'm going to be using a 7-inch elastic. Be using that same method of just using a safety pin. All right, so elastic through. Take out my safety pin. So sewing the ends together, making sure that there's no twists in the elastic as well. So my elastic is in, nice and stretchy. I'm going to change the length of my stitch onto my sewing machine to a smaller one, find my end and close it up. So we have our two scrunchies. This one is the 30-inch one by 9, with the elastic being 7 inches, and then we have the 55-inch one by 9 and the elastic being 8.5 inches. So definitely you can see this one has a lot more volume, a lot more full, a lot more fluffy. You could probably make this one a little bit more compact. This one was a 7-inch elastic, so it really depends on your hair type though, and how many times you want it to go around. So definitely different looks. So let's see how they look. And this one is just a normal regular scrunchie. Now if I just put it around once, way too loose. So once, twice. So it's still pretty full, very large. Put it at the top of my head and we'll see from there. That's a whole nother look, but I only really have to do it twice. That's an interesting look. I don't know if that one's for me. All right, and then we're gonna try the 30 inches. So once, twice. Definitely cute as well. I think just depending on the shape of like your head and how much scrunchie you want. Let's put it on top of my head. It's definitely a look. I think this one is maybe a bit more realistic to my head, but it's quite large as well, so kind of just depends what the look you're going for. You could do something like that. That would be more realistic to what I would wear. What do you think? What size would you wear? If it was like a low side pony. That one's cute for a low side pony. Let's try the big one. That one is definitely extra, but still really cute if I was gonna go somewhere. And if I was just gonna put it as a low pony at the back. I feel like I need to fluff this one out all the time. So definitely a low pony can work and has its own merit. So let me know which one you were going to make, or if you found a better size that works for you, let me know, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.